Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Horaire. I'm the founder of The Artist Entrepreneur and business and PR strategist for artists and creative entrepreneurs. I'm excited to be doing this interview today for you guys because we have an amazing guest who's going to talk to us about pricing, personal finances, money matters, all those things that are usually that sound icky or that are topics that are taboo when it comes to artists. But I'm excited because she's an artist herself. Her name is Christina Empedocles. She's a certified financial planner and the founder of Insight Personal Finance. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you because just before we were recording this, we were saying how important it is to talk about money and pricing. And why don't you tell me a little bit how an artist became a personal finance certified financial planner person, because this is absolutely not a typical path.
Well, I became a financial planner and got interested in finance originally when I was getting my MFA. It's absolutely comes out of being an artist and asking all the questions that probably the people in your audience ask, which is, how am I going to make this work financially? I figured out a whole lot of stuff about how to make a great painting, about how to network, about how to make the right connections and how to present my work, but it doesn't necessarily translate financially. And when I was in grad school and kind of preparing for the next stage of when I was going to go out there and be on my own in my fine art practice, I would ask everyone that I came in touch with, every professor, all my fellow students, visiting artists, advisors, everyone I could ask, I would say, okay, so break it down for me. How does this work financially? And I couldn't get an answer. I couldn't get a clear answer. And I left grad school thinking, okay, now what? So I started taking classes, or I actually started just reading books about personal finance. And I found that there are no books for what we do, or there are very few books for what we do. At the time, I couldn't find any, because as artists, we have a very unique problem. And that is that most of the time, we don't know how much money we're going to make next month or next week or next year. And because of that, it's really hard to save for the future. We keep all of our money that we do make very close, and then it gets spent. So, and
also, I'm sorry to cut you, but for many artists, there's there are expenses, right? So not only don't you know when you're going to make money, but also you have to put money up front to create your work.
Absolutely. That is that's a whole nother part of it that makes it difficult. Not only do we not know how much we're going to make, but we're tasked with financing the work ahead of time. And those two things together would make it difficult for anyone in any industry. A lot of artists think that we're just plain bad with money, and it's not true. I truly believe we're actually incredible with money because so many of us do so much with so little. And but anyone would find this challenging. So once I kind of got out on my own and I decided that I was going to, this is what I was going to do, this is who I was going to be, I needed to really master this topic. So I started taking classes and talking to my fellow artists. And I continued that conversation of asking people, how are you going to make this work financially? And just gathering anecdotes and along the way, getting very well educated in finance to the point where I've been able to become a certified financial planner and start my own my own independent firm.
While continuing your art practice.
Yes.
So tell me, when you were asking all these people at university about money, I'm curious to know, like, the reaction, right? Were they surprised that you were talking about money? Did it sound taboo? Was it like, don't talk about this here? Or
yes, absolutely. It was, I don't know if it was surprise, but it was more like dread. Oh my gosh, am I going to have to talk about this? People keep this information very close to the chest. People don't like to share about what's going on behind the scenes with their money. And it's the one thing I see us as a community, a creative community, we're not sharing about, we're not learning from each other. So everybody's very isolated, just in their own struggle. And for being now on the other side of that conversation, where I'm talking to a lot of artists, what amazes me is that so many of us have the same issues. We're all struggling with a lot of the same things. And if we could just get together and compare notes, we'd probably be in a much better situation.
Yeah. So talking about that, now that you've met so many artists because you've been helping them with their finances and cleaning it all up, and also maybe getting rid of some, money mindset issues that they might have, what do you think? Why is it, in your experience, that so many artists are under earners? How do you explain that? Is it an industry thing? Is it a mindset thing?
I think there's a few different reasons. Of course, everybody's different, but I see it happen over and over again. And I actually see it with older artists more than younger artists. That's something I've noticed lately. But I'm in my 40s, and I see a lot of my peers doing this thing where they just don't want to, they feel bad asking for more, or they feel bad asking for what they need. And a lot of times, so I think about this all the time, like, why do we do this? And, I think some of it's rooted in the culture around our industry. We feel guilty asking for money, for compensation for something we love to do. But even though I am on the side of being very well educated in finance, I find myself doing the same thing all the time. It's something I struggle with constantly. So it goes deep. But one thing that I think was one of the powerful forces is that we look at our work and we want it to be available. We love what we do, and we love our community, our friends. We want it to be available to them. And so a lot of people think of themselves as their market, or of their, immediate community as their market. And so they want to price what they do so that their friends can buy their work. And unfortunately, unless you are very wealthy, you probably shouldn't be able to afford your own work. It's been a long time since I could afford my own work. And that's a good thing, because the work that I do, it takes a long time to produce. So I often spend weeks on a single piece, and full time. And it would not be possible for me to go out and buy work from somebody who spent, 4 weeks on a single drawing. And so I can't expect to price my work so that my friends could afford it. That was a little convoluted, but
it makes a lot of sense, because we talked about target audience in another workshop, and I said that one of the biggest mistakes that artists make is that they use themselves as a profile for their target audience. And then when it comes to pricing your art, it's the same thing, right? If you're thinking about yourself and the people and if you're basing your pricing on the feedback you're getting from your brother-in-law or your cousin or your second neighbor, they don't
Exactly.
know how to price art, right? Because it's not like buying a mattress or buying spaghetti sauce, right? No, but it's
Yes.
true. So it's a luxury item, it's a high-end item, and you are putting all your energy and your emotions and your talent into it. And it also is, when you're not pricing yourself high enough, you're basically putting your practice in jeopardy. Am I right?
Absolutely, because there's no way that you'll be able to sustain the amount of work you need to put into your practice selling it. I mean, this is making the generalization that everyone, is in the same financial position. That's not
Mm-hmm.
exactly the case, but you know, just assuming that the people around you will be able to support you, you would either have to produce so much work, just pump out the work and sell every single piece at a low price, meaning high volume, low price. Or if you do make something that takes time to craft, then you're going to have to increase the price so that you can still have enough income from it to support yourself. What I'm always amazed at how expensive it is to make anything.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially lately, where the prices of all materials have increased over the past 3 years. It's crazy.
Yes, and my big expense is framing. So my practice is now centered around drawing. My paper is really expensive, but it pales in comparison to the cost of framing. And so, it's easy to think when you're starting off on a project like, okay, I need paper and a couple of pencils, and then it's just my time. But then when you have to add $500 on the back end to get it framed, even to show it to anyone, it's expensive. And when you have a show where there's, 20 to 25 of those pieces, that ends up being a lot of money.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And then if you are shipping that somewhere, I work with a gallery. I'm in San Francisco and I work with a gallery in Denver. So to get my work over there, it can be, hundreds of dollars in cost of shipping. So, but all of those things come later in the process. So when you're starting off and you're saying, yes, I want that show, I just need a couple of pieces of paper and some pencils, you're not thinking about the thousands of dollars you're going to have to front before the work actually, even gets up on the wall.
You're absolutely going into the direction that I wanted to go next, which is talking about the common mistakes that artists make when they're pricing their art or their services. And what you're saying here is basically they're not seeing the whole picture, right? They don't know their numbers. They don't know how much the whole thing is going to cost, right? Because here you're talking about the process of creating the work and having it ready for a show or ready to go to the collector's home. But even the part of marketing it, right? The time that you're spending marketing your business, your art, who you are going to give a talk, or having to go to Denver to be there at your opening, right? This is marketing. If you don't show up at your opening, I can guarantee you the sales are not going to be as great as if you were there, right? If you're there, you're not there, it's going to make a difference. And these should all be calculated in the cost. Like you said, it's not just the piece of paper and the pencil that you should be accounting for.
Absolutely. Having done this for several years now, I can now see, and keeping account of all of my expenses, I can now see what I have had to pay for to.
Did you hear that, people? She said keeping account of all her expenses over a few years. That is so important.
It is. And it's fascinating to actually look back at it, because what I've been able to do, I wrote a post about this a while back. where I looked at, well, so let me back up. For each piece of art that I make and I send to my gallery, I make an info sheet for it. And it has a picture of the piece and the title, the size, and the date, and then the price. And then it also has where I got it photographed. I usually send my work out to get photographed properly, who framed it, the cost of the photography, the cost of the framing, and then the cost of shipping, if it's indeed shipped, and then any previous shows it's been in. So it's just this kind of, just all the data about that one piece.
Basically, you're cataloging your work.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And I include that when I send a piece out. So it's just, that info is always with it. So I can now look back on my work and see how much each piece cost me. And it's kind of crazy how expensive it is just to produce your own work. And then ship it from this place to that place. Some pieces have been in multiple shows, different parts of the country, and to kind of start totaling up what those costs are. And then you can look at those costs and then compare it to your sales price and think, oh my God, am I even breaking even on this? And sometimes you don't. And sometimes you're barely breaking even, but it's really humbling to see once you put all of that information together, because it's so easy to just gloss over some of these big expenses.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And in those expenses, it won't include my travel to the show or the dress I bought for the opening or any of that stuff, which is also an expense that goes
Absolutely.
into it.
Studio space, all these things, right? And even in your case, you're represented by a gallery, so you have minimal marketing expenses. But for artists who are excited because they want to sell direct and not pay that 50% commission, well, there's going to be more costs, right? There are going to be more marketing costs. And when I hear artists say, well, I can't afford marketing, I can't afford advertisement, I can't afford, I say, well, advertisement and marketing is an investment. But of course, if you don't know your numbers, if you're not tracking, right, what kind of return on investing you're getting, then of course you think everything is too expensive because you have not keep track of what worked and what gave you an ROI. Another mistake, and you kind of touched on this, but I want to come back to it, is when you said artists, create work, and if they sell it all, they'll sell volume and they'll make enough money. And I think that's also another mistake, maybe more artists who are starting out who say, well, I'm going to price my work really low, $100, and the piece, let's just talk hypothetically, and I want to make 100,000, so I'll map out to sell 1,000 pieces. 1,000 pieces is your first. Like, can you create 1,000 pieces? Second, do you have the audience, right, to sell 1,000 pieces too? So one mistake I see is that they don't correlate how many pieces they need to create and sell to reach their revenue goals. So that's the first mistake. And the other mistake is thinking that they're going to sell everything they produce. In your experience, Christina, as an established artist, selling everything you produce is quite a challenge, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's, some people do it, I guess. But what I find is that it's amazing to sell half a show and then have the rest of that show stay with your gallery, and they can have it over the course of time, until your next show, and they will try to gradually sell the rest of the work. Some pieces haven't sold for whatever reason. I have some of them on my walls. But I know that's just part of the process.
But it's part of any sales process. Every retail store you'll go into, I've worked in retail. I mean, whatever product or service well, maybe not service, but whatever product you're selling, it's very rare that you get 100%, right, out in the market. There's always going to be a few pieces that are not going to find buyers, or that are going to find buyers really later on. So you need to take that in consideration also in your pricing strategy. Otherwise, otherwise you'll always end up losing money.
Absolutely. And the other thing that kind of goes along with that, in my experience, has been that when you are working with a gallery, and not necessarily everybody is, there's a whole system of discounting.
Yes.
So you have to be very clear on what price you're expecting to get. So
yes,
when you initially price that piece at a certain place, you need to do the mental math to know that it could be 10 to 15%. With some galleries, they even go down to 20% discount.
Absolutely.
For their collectors. And then, don't anchor your expectations on the full price, but know probably much of the work that you do end up selling is going to be at that lower discounted price, and you're going to get half of that. And that is the amount of money you need to make sure is going to work for you.
Yeah, and that applies to artists who are represented in galleries and artists who sell direct, because there's this myth going on right now, and I don't know who it is, and I want to debunk it, okay? It's not true that in the fine art market, giving a discount is a bad thing, and that giving discount will devalue your art. Because if it was the case, all blue chip galleries would be devaluating art. Okay, it's a common practice. Nobody talks about it, but everybody knows it. People give discount. It's a high-end product. It's products that have high profit margins for all the reasons we just explained as we were talking. So the profit margins are high. So the seasoned collectors know, especially if they're purchasing more than one piece, or if they're a recurring collector, right? If they're coming back for more, they expect to be treated as a VIP, and they expect to get a little discount. And if you don't know your numbers, again, see how we're coming back to this all the time? You cannot agree to it. If you're selling direct, you can't say yes or no to a discount, because giving a discount shouldn't just be based on principle. It should be based on numbers, right? If you're still making a decent profit margin, and acquiring this collector would mean more sales down the line, right? Because selling again to someone who's already bought from you reduces your marketing costs. So why not do it? If it feels good, if you have that profit margin that's still working for you, why not do it? But you need to know your numbers in order to say, yes, I can do this for you, or no, I can't. And it's the same thing with your gallery, right? You have to have these open and honest conversations on what their practices are for discounts, and take that into account when you have that conversation. Because your gallery, if you're represented by a gallery, you absolutely should have an open and honest conversation about pricing, right? Because they're going to have to represent you, and they could have really good insight to share with you about your prices. But you also need to know what their practice is in terms of pricing, in terms of discount. So you can do exactly what you just said. Say, okay, I can do this, or I have to increase my prices to be able to follow whatever the gallery is doing.
Well, yes, I agree with all of that. And what I came to realize is that each gallery has its own collector base.
Oh, yeah, it's like their own little ecosystem.
Yes, exactly. And your gallerist works very hard to build and to nurture that audience. And they know exactly, when they look at your work, they know exactly how much they can sell it for. And so it's very interesting to me to go into that world and have kind of an idea of how much my work was worth, or that I could sell it for, and then go to a gallery and have them give me a completely different number. And so they, each gallery has its own price range that they're kind of working with and that they can support. And so working with a gallerist, you have to be okay with their price range. They're not going to be just like, it's possible that you could find a gallery that loves your work, but it's not going to be in the right price range for you to be able to support yourself.
Yes.
And
yes.
So,
yes.
So you have to know that. And along with that, with this whole discussion of discounts, is I came to realize that a smart gallery, the price they expect is the discounted price. And that anything, if they get the full price of that piece, it's a premium. So that, they're expecting probably 50% of the work that they sell. I'm just throwing that out there without any data.
No, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah.
So they're expecting, some portion of the work that they sell to be discounted. And so they probably, I would imagine the savviest gallerists, they already have in their mind that whatever they have for sale that month, they're going to shoot to sell 75% of it. That's going to be discounted by 10%. They're going to get half of that. And they're working on that number. And we should be doing the same.
Exactly. When you're pricing.
And, just understanding the reality of when you go into a gallery, or even I imagine if you're working in a platform like Etsy or some other platform where people are selling their work like Saatchi, or, understand what that audience can bear.
Yeah. And
whether or not it is at an appropriate level that you can support yourself with your work, considering how much you can produce, and what your needs are.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
So when you kind of can come up with that number of what you can reasonably expect, or not even expect, but just, what you're working with, then you can decide, okay, this number is not nearly enough, and I'm going to have to raise my prices and maybe look for a different way to get my work out with a different audience, or this number works perfectly, or, maybe I don't even have to produce as much.
Yeah.
Because I find, after spending several years full-time producing work for shows, that the pace can be exhausting, and you need to protect your ability to create and to continue doing your work. And when you have a show, maybe, either a 1 or 2 person show, and then you have maybe an art fair or 2 that you're contributing to, for me, it was an exhausting pace of creativity. And a lot of us, think like, how's that possible that it's like too creative and you're making too much art? But I think it's possible where when you're just producing, and everything has to be a home run, or everything has to sell, it can really fatigue your ability to love your practice. And so being very careful about how you're pricing so that you're not pumping out the work at, breakneck speed is important.
And so you continue creating valuable and quality work, right?
Yeah.
And so many things you said here that are interesting. Okay, so I just want to outline a couple of things. When you said that we need to align, right? I'm using my own words here, but you were saying align, when you're looking at your pricing strategy, the audience you want to sell to and the sales channels you're going to use, right? And that really makes sense, right? You have to look at your costs, and also the market that you want to penetrate, right? Which market do you want to go into? and what kind of prices can that market bear, right? That's really, really important. And I think another mistake that artists make, pricing themselves too low, can get them away, instead of getting them closer to their goal because they think they're going to sell more, and can get them away from their goal, because some galleries won't even give them time of day, because when they look at these prices, they're like, whoa, like I have overhead here. Like I'm not going to spend a minute marketing this, because even if I sell it, it's not worth my time, right? Some collectors will not even be interested in your work because this is not because the perceived value is so low, and they're like, I don't want to waste time with this, right? So instead of helping your situation, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot, right? Because you're thinking in a scarcity mindset. I can't, like we said, coming back to what we said at the beginning, I can't afford it. The people I know can't afford it. So how am I going to sell something to people I don't know? But that's really the big challenge. That really what separates people who are selling and not selling. So how did you overcome this fear, right, of like asking, and you said you still have it sometimes, but asking for, and I don't like to say ask what it's worth, because I think artists and all of us are worth more than dollar signs. I'd rather use the term value, right? The market value. How did you overcome this fear, and or still overcoming this fear personally?
Well, so I've had experience pricing a bunch of stuff.
I know, like art, the services also.
Yes. So I experienced the exact same feeling with both. So that it's, it's not unique to art. But when I had the advantage with my fine art practice that I had an advocate who was saying, this is what I will sell it for. This is what I can sell it for. And that's what we're going to shoot for. He had a much better idea than I did. And once we established those prices, then they translated to other places. So once I established
So when you talk about an advocate, you mean your gallery owner?
Yeah.
So it could be a gallerist, or if you don't have a gallerist now and you're listening to this and like, yeah, that's all good and great, I don't have a gallerist, but you can still reach out to mentors, right? Maybe an artist that's more experienced, or even a gallery owner that you would, try to contact and build a relationship and to get some mentorship, even if he or she doesn't represent you, might be happy to help you. There's a bunch of different people that you can reach out to for mentorship that could give you that sort of guidance.
Absolutely. Even professors, if you've been to art school, they're likely working, with galleries. They have that, an idea of what prices should be. But I in that world, what I understood, kind of the philosophy I adopted was, I'm going to start somewhere. It might not be the perfect price, but I'm going to start somewhere, and then I am going to gradually grow my prices and never go back down.
Yes, I love that. Absolutely. If there's one advice I keep giving is grow slowly, take your time.
Yes. And I found that then when you do that, you get more comfortable asking for that price as you're just incrementally moving up.
Yeah.
And so I took that understanding and I applied it to the services that I sell in my financial planning business. And before that, in my graphic design and illustration business, where, I had kind of a set fee that I was working with in each. And then those things I would gradually grow and never go back. Yeah. And so, it would be less of a leap to decide like, okay, I'm going to increase my prices by 10% or something like that with this new client and see what happens. And what I found is that nobody ever said no. as I was increasing my price. So I chose to do it with my services. I chose to do it with new clients.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of going back to my old clients and saying, actually, now I'm this much,
Yeah.
I just kept my fees with them. And when I brought on new people, I would give them the higher fee and see what happened.
Yeah.
And there was never anyone who said, it's too much, it's too high. And what that made me realize, particularly in my design business, where, it felt very much like, oh, I'm doing this fun creative thing, I shouldn't be charging very much. I found that I was like, even if I was, even when I had gone from like doubling my prices over time, like I was still underpricing myself.
Yeah, exactly. And also as you are growing as an artist and your practice gets refined and you're better and your work gets better, you're slowly increasing your prices, and you're also going to attract, right, a clientele that's more refined, a clientele that appreciates your work better because your work's getting better. And as you move and grow as an artist, it is normal that you will see this new group of people, a new audience,
Mm-hmm.
get close to your work and be interested and want to purchase it and not constantly be doubting about your prices. We only have a few minutes left, Christina, and I really want us to tell people where they can find you, because Christina has a bunch of great content to share about personal finances and planning your finances. But also tell me, like, is there books, resources that you recommend artists to read, other than your blog, of course, that we're going to mention? But what do you recommend artists? Like, what is it maybe that you said you read and really helped you with your mindset, or even just practical tools?
Well, one thing is, when I started learning about finance, I read a ton of books. And you don't necessarily have to read as many as I did. But what I found was that the first book about money that you read, it may or may not speak to you, or you may or may not get it. But as you layer voices over that, they're all going to kind of cover the same sort of things. And at some point, it's going to click. So I always recommend people, just make it kind of something that is a thing that you sort of read in the background. Like maybe you read articles online every once in a while about your finances, maybe, or in the newspaper. Maybe you pick up, a book at the airport when you're going on a long flight and you have a few hours, and maybe you just pick up whatever is the money book there at the airport where you're kind of trapped. I found that it was most powerful to me to listen to multiple voices about it, a topic that seemed so foreign and difficult for me to finally understand it for myself. But that said, there are a few books that I think are excellent. So one is How a Second Grader Beat Wall Street. It's a really excellent book about investing that uncovers why, indeed, it's not that difficult for people like you and I to figure out.
Yeah.
My philosophy about personal finance and money is that the simpler, the better, because if you create a simple plan, a simple set of habits around your money, you're likely to do them.
Yes.
If you have a really complicated plan that has all kinds of bells and whistles, you might not actually do any of it.
Well, I think it's true for everything that we resist, right? Whether it's eating healthy, exercising, our personal finance. These are all stuff in our lives that we have a tendency to resist. Like if you're listening to this interview and you're resisting, like you're like, I'm not going to read books. I hate finances. I hate talking about money. What is this? Well, you need to go and look at where this resistance is coming from and how it's serving you. Like, You know, like, has it helped you to not look at your money? Has it helped you to say, well, I'm an artist and money is not my thing? Probably not, right? So educating yourself, right, is the first step, so that you can also, because as artists, when people tell me my art is too expensive, or they can't afford it, or why is it so this and that, I'm like, it's your job as an artist to also educate the public, educate your audience on why is an artwork expensive, right? And if you can't openly talk about these things and educate people, if you don't educate yourself first, and then if you're not talking about this openly, how can you expect things to change and get more people to buy art and more people to value art?
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. And I just want to say,
yes.
I started from the same place.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
I started from that place of being stressed out, of feeling like I can't do this. I need some expert to come in and tell me what to do. That was the thought I always had in my head, like, oh, I need to get started with my money, but first I have to find some expert that can help me.
Yeah.
And now I realized that really the expert I needed was me. I needed to educate myself, and it wasn't nearly as opaque as I thought it would be.
Painful.
Actually, it was so
empowering.
I found it so empowering.
Yeah.
After I kind of started getting a clue and doing my reading, I got addicted to reading personal finance. I basically would read one after another book about money for probably 5 years.
Okay, so those of you listening, we don't expect that from you. We don't expect you to become a finance nerd like Christina. Christina can do that for you, of course. But also what I've noticed from artists that I've been working with is the second they start opening themselves up, being more purposeful about it, getting clear, not hiding from it, all of a sudden this magical thing happens and the money starts coming in.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So if you're looking for an incentive to get clear on your money and make more money, start by looking at it, start by educating yourself. So we're going to have to go, but thank you so much, Christina, and tell everyone where they can find you and where they can find all these amazing free resources that you have for artists.
You can find my website at www.insightpersonalfinance.com, all one word. And I hope you will click on my blog, because I love writing about the intersection of money and life and art. And my whole goal is to make it fun and to actually relate it to, the people in our community. So I think it could be a good place to start.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I send clients to you all the time. So remind the website again, just for those of you who haven't heard.
It's insightpersonalfinance.com. And one thing I just put up there that I'm so excited about is I have been gathering a list of grants and opportunities for artists and entrepreneurs, just scouring the internet for as many grant opportunities as possible. And so I've been creating this list, and it's getting really good. And I'm adding to it every month. So
you guys need to check it out. I've seen artists all over Facebook sharing that post, sharing that post. It's amazing. People are sharing it. So you need to get your hands on that list of grants. You need to see what Christina Empedocles talks about on her blog, Inside Personal Finance. And why not send her an email, tell her what you're working on, and see if she can help you make more money.
Absolutely.
Yay! Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Christina, for taking the time to talk with us today. This was so good, and it's so nice to have the voice of an artist that confirms what the artist entrepreneur tries to teach and encourage artists to do. So thank you so much, Christina. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.